Hello and welcome to another Lit Matters. This video is a walking talking mock setup. It's designed to improve your exam technique for English Literature Paper 2. You might have seen the video I did for Paper 1, a very similar affair. With this one I'm going to talk you through each question, the exam technique you need, the skills, the way you need to attack the questions, the assessment objectives that you are being marked upon and you will gain credit for each time. And I'll set it up with a certain amount of timing, so if you want to pause it you can go and try and do some past papers or practice questions timing yourself. Okay, so to get started then, some outcomes. The point of this, again, exactly the same as the first one. Increased experience and confidence with the exam process, clear idea and feel for how you'll be examined in 2 weeks time, that says, but it might be tomorrow or it might be sometime soon. And that idea that confidence comes from preparing yourself. Close focus on timings, how to pace yourself, precise instructions on which tasks you need to do, when to do it, for how long, etc. And a degree of clarity and focus for your revision. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. At each interval, I'll give you a certain number of instructions, and then you can go away and do it with the appropriate time according to each question. This is a suggestion. It's up to you to pace yourself and time yourself. It might be you find the poetry section slightly harder, slightly less predictable, and you need longer. It might not, so that's your call. But this is roughly what I would advise. And that's scheduled to take 2 hours 15 minutes, just like usual. Okay, for both sections you've got to read the question, read the question, read the question, you idiots. I know it sounds stupid and patronizing, but it's easy to panic and you'll be under pressure and you'll be stressed and you'll know that it matters and there's no turning back and all the rest of it, and you'll be keen to get your writing down straight away. So slow yourself down, have that composure and just check yourself, make sure you're heading in the right direction before you go charging off. So again, just like paper 1, you got to be smart from the start. You got to know your assessment objectives, know what it is you're going to get credit for and what you're not, on a question by question basis. If you don't know your enemy in this battle, then expect to lose. But if you do, there's no reason why you shouldn't be confident. So specifically then, each question. The first, question A, which will perhaps be Jekyll and Hyde or another 19th century novel. 1A is an extract question and is purely on AO2, language, form and structure. The 1B is purely AO1, so basically can you write, can you have a good personal response using quotations, backing yourself up and write intelligently and articulately. There's no context for that one, so unlike Macbeth where there's 5 marks for context, no context at all for this one. That doesn't mean you can't use any context. It means just don't feel like pressured like you have to. You're not going to lose marks for not using it, but you might still drop in touches of context here and there if they're part of a bigger point and you're showing that you really understand the text, but don't labour the point on that one. Section B, the anthology poetry comparison. So I've got here conflict, but it might be the other anthologies, relationships and love, so on. There's 5 marks there for context and 15 for your AO2. And then the last one, a mixture of AO1 and AO2, how well can you write, and that close attention to language, form and structure. So you can see there's quite a lot of marks available here for AO2. It's an AO2 heavy paper, 47 out of the 80 marks for your analysis of language, form and structure. So don't take your eyes off that. Right, question 1A, purely AO2. Okay, requires you to make specific points about use of language and structure. Not Shakespeare, shouldn't say Shakespeare there. Use of language and structure. Try and make 4 or 5 developed analytical paragraphs and stick to the extract. Don't talk about stuff elsewhere because they'll think, okay, the examiner will think that, all right, you don't know your stuff well enough. That's why you're searching around and groping around in the rest of the text. So stick to this extract. So some specifics then. Well, it's language and form and structure. So language, what are you looking for? You're looking for parts of speech, so that's adjectives, verbs, adverbs, imperatives, and to identify them. Perhaps individual powerful words and phrases, so specific words and phrases. Why has that one in particular been chosen? So think about something like when Hyde kills Sir Danvers Carew, he clubs him down. The fact that he is clubbed perhaps suggests that he's something of a caveman, that he's barbaric or savage or primitive or the like. So try and zoom right in on individual words and squeeze the meaning out of them. Then language devices, metaphor, simile, etc. Call them out, name them, and then always explain the effects. Don't sit there too happy that you can spot a simile. It's not hard. But you're going to get the marks for how well you can explain what the meaning behind the simile. Look for connotations, hints, and suggestions as well. Okay. Here's a couple of nice ones on in the orange boxes there. Some other thoughts about structure. Look for juxtaposition. Certainly in Jekyll and Hyde, there'll probably be some. The whole novel is about juxtaposition. Perhaps there's a difference in the overall extract, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Does it evolve in a sense? Does it develop and go somewhere? Perhaps some easy things to spot: list or caesure or triples. Not so relevant meter, prose, verse for the 19th century novel, but you can also look for punctuation as well. Perhaps an easy one to spot is there a series of question marks to add a sense of insecurity or lack of clarity or uncertainty? Might there be a lot of exclamation marks which might suggest intensity or anger or violence or rage or something? Okay, so some of the more advanced language devices here, something like sibilance, easy one, just the repetition of the S sound. There's lots of that with Hyde, like Satan's signature on his face, and you can associate that with a serpent and associate that with the devil or Satan. So that's a nice one. Pathetic fallacy, when the weather is suggestive of a certain mood, and the weather is perhaps reflective of adds to the setting and brings out certain characters' emotions in a sense. It might be foggy and dark, perhaps suggestive of confusion and a lack of clarity. Cacophony is the use of harsh sounds. Fricatives and plosives. These are quite advanced. Don't worry if you haven't come across these. Fricatives are like F, V, and S sounds when you let a little bit of air out your mouth, so f, v, s, and you're controlling the airflow. Plosives are P, D, T, K, where you close off your mouth and then the airflow sort of explodes out in one go, and they have more of an impact. Okay, right. So as ever, the question is, how far are you prepared to go? Don't expect a lot of marks for just having a point. Don't expect a lot of marks for just copying in a quotation. Expect the marks for how developed your explanation can be. Oops, jumped on. So what does it show about a certain character? What does it show about other characters? How could you link it to the atmosphere or perhaps the audience's feelings? Something else in the rest of the text, perhaps foreshadowing or recalling? And think why. Can you link this to some of the themes or the context, the author's message a little bit? So this hexagon of hexagons, you're not going to use it every time for every quotation, but maybe pick off 2 or 3 each time and really try and stretch and expand your analysis. Okay, so that's about the instructions for question 1A. You can now pause this and off you go, 30 minutes. Okay, we're back then. Question 1B is just an AO1 question, and it requires you to discuss how a theme reflected in the extract is explored elsewhere in the play. There's no marks for context here, so don't stress about that. It requires a personal response, requires use of short quotations, often better than long ones, just 1 or 2 words. Embed them into your sentences, work them into the flow of your sentences, and you will seem more sophisticated. Try and maintain that critical style, so you're slightly detached, and you're formal, obviously, and go elsewhere in the text. Show you can range around the text, and you don't just give off this impression that you only know 1 or 2 quotations, or you've only read chapter 1. The broader the range, the more it looks like you've got a real grip on the text. Okay, so that's about that then for question 1B. I would suggest you've got 25 minutes for this, but the timings you might like to adjust them as you see fit. 25 minutes, you can pause it now and give it a go. Okay, moving on to section B, 40 marks for the poetry. The anthology comparison offers 15 for AO2. So you need plenty of language analysis, zooming in on those individual words and phrases, but you also need to be thinking about a structure, but 5 marks for context. Okay. Again, I would think, what does a proper poetry analysis look like? Well, I think sort of 4 to 6 analytical paragraphs, similar principles to when you were doing the Macbeth or your Shakespeare in the first one, or the Jekyll and Hyde or novel for question A in section A. You want to stretch your explanations. You want to show the depth and the extent of your knowledge. So try and think about hints, suggestions, possibilities. Speculate away, connotations and the like. And you don't have to be. Who can really know exactly what was in Tennyson's heart or Byron's heart? We can't know for 100% certain everything. So as long as you can back yourself up, then you can be freed up to speculate. As long as you're using language that sort of qualifies it by saying, arguably Tennyson was wishing to communicate this. It's possible that Byron was trying to highlight the theme of such and such. Okay, so. For the context then, you need a couple of contextual touches. 5 marks here for the AO3. So if you're doing the conflict poetry for Excel, you are perhaps for Sennacherib or Prelude or Poison Tree, Charge of the Light Brigade, you would have to know about their links of those poets to the Romantic movements and Romanticism in general. Something like Charge of the Light Brigade, you have to be clear which war it is. The Crimean War. Exposure relates to World War One. The man he killed to the Boer War in South Africa. Belfast Confetti to the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and something like what were they like the Vietnam War. Okay, again, the language devices with poetry. Again, how many levels can you take them to? A couple of added ones that are quite nice there. Enjambment, which sounds kind of French to me, is just when one idea rolls into another line and into another line. And where an idea kind of goes across the lines, and it sort of can give off the sense that the poet wants to, has feelings running away with them, or they can't keep control of their emotions, or the memories are flooding back, or something like that. Anaphora is really easy. Sounds fancy, and I think it might make you stand out in an exam. It's basically just the repetition at the start of lines, so starting consecutive lines with the same words. So Tennyson does this in Charge of the Light Brigade. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered. So it's just a way to emphasize and bring to the front of the audience's mind an element, in this case cannons, and how massive they were and bloody big and important and all the rest of it. Okay, so there's plenty of language devices there, and again, structure. Look for similar things. With the poetry, you perhaps want to be talking about stanzas, whether it's a monologue, perhaps it's written in blank verse, something like the Prelude, which is just one blank verse, or other poems might be written in a more tightly controlled rhyme scheme. It might be the look of the poem, how it's built on the page. Something like Belfast Confetti each line looks like a gun. He's written the line out so it looks like a gun itself. And there, the punctuation, is very reflective of perhaps the control of the army or the military or the government or his emotions. Okay. Plenty of connectives of comparison then. Okay, they will want you to compare one poem that is given poem with another one from the anthology. So they don't want you just to deal with one poem and then deal with the other poem and boof, that's it. They want you to constantly be comparing and contrasting between the two. That doesn't mean you've got to find things that are identical. You can find things that are not similar to and are different. That's fine. But don't just deal with one poem and then move on and deal with another. I think you're going to come across more focused on the individual elements of a poem and analysing those when you're constantly comparing and contrasting the whole way through. Okay, so again, how far are you prepared to go? There's John Agard there and Alfred Lord Tennyson. The point being the same. Try and stretch your analysis, stretch your explanations. Okay, so that's about my instructions for the anthology question. Okay, if you're doing this like a walkie-talkie mock, there you go. You got 35 minutes. Off you go. Give one of those questions a go. And we're back. Okay, section B, unseen poetry. AO1 and AO2. So again, perhaps about 4 to 6 analytical paragraphs. If you're trying to stretch yourself, more like 6. If you want the top marks, I think more like 6. Again, stretch your explanation, show the depth and the extent of your knowledge. So, again, trying to identify language devices, structural features, elements of the form. Why does it look the way it does on the page? How has it been built? Why have particular words been used? And try and zoom in on them, squeeze the meaning out of them. What do they suggest? What do they hint at? What do they connote? And as ever, go to effects. Explain the effects of all of this stuff. Don't just spot it. That's okay, but you're not going to get loads of marks. You've got to be explaining it and keep trying to Bring it back to some of those hexagons, perhaps, and is it a particular effect that the poet is desiring to have on his or her audience? So that's about my instructions for the anthology question. Sorry, the unseen question. And again, 35 minutes I would suggest for that. So you can do a practice paper, past paper question like that in your own time. I hope you found that quick bit of exam technique advice useful for you. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave some comments below to let me know how I can make these more helpful. Alright, good luck tomorrow or whenever you do the exam. Bye bye. Hey, I forgot this. Look at me. Don't you forget it. Look how easy it is to forget something as important as that. We've saved 5 minutes to check your work through. You've only done 130 minutes so far. That's for extra 5 minutes. Check your work through. Don't be lazy. Don't be thick. Like me. I was just thick there. Easily done. Try to upgrade wherever possible. Increase your accuracy and precision. And remember, a lot of people will be thick like me, or a lot of people will be lazy. And they won't do this. So you can steal a little march on them by just making sure you got no silly errors in there, making sure you're still going right up to the final whistle, and you keep pushing yourself, push yourself, push yourself, and then you rest up when you're done, and you don't rest up in the exam hall. All right, bye properly this time. Good luck.
Pressure.